Hey guys, Martin here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today I want to just have a little bit of a discussion about the Dokkan Fest baby that has just released in the game. You guys know I didn't have a great amount of luck with my summons, but I have been testing him out on the private server, so using a rainbow full level 10 links category, full level 10 links version of the character, and obviously able to build any team that I want with any unit in the game all fully maxed out. So essentially I've been able to try out a few different team builds of him and just see him in some different events and see how well he does. And I have to say my overall feelings on this guy as of right now is that he is not particularly good. Dokkan Fest baby is something that we have waited a crazy amount of time for. It's you know, it was every time a new Dokkan Fest was going to come out, right, everyone would speculate that it was potentially going to be baby because, you know, he was the one big one that was missing a Dokkan Fest that we had not yet got to see. And it's something that people had very much been anticipating for the longest time. And we finally got one. And I mean, the thing is, I don't think he's like completely terrible or anything, but I think he is one of those units that just kind of falls through the cracks, right? It's one of those things I talked about. I think I was trying to remember back to what I said this about the last time I said it. And I think it was when I was talking about Festival, when it first came out, and why I didn't like it, or especially didn't like the early stages where the, you know, you're just kind of stacking simulator for like 40 turns. Is it one of the biggest sins that a game can do is be boring, which is how I feel about Festival a lot of the time. And when it comes to a character releasing in a game, whether it's a gacha game, whether it's a fighting game, like any of these kind of games that release characters, obviously gacha games do it in a slightly different way to other games, but games that have DLC characters and stuff like that, the worst thing that a character can be when they come out in one of these games is mid. Unforgettable, nothing important, just like, because, you know, characters like Dokkan Fest Raditz, terrible on release, right? One of the worst Dokkan Fests at that time on release in terms of how good he was versus the meta of the game, like when he released. But it's kind of one of those things where he was so bad that obviously it became a meme. People still talk about it even now. His Easy A is something that gets talked about a lot because people obviously are hoping that when he does eventually get an Easy A, his Easy A will actually be good and finally give him a chance to actually do something interesting rather than just be completely terrible. So he is, you know, it's almost one of those things. It's like, would I rather a unit be as bad as Raditz so we can at least have jokes about the unit? And then that encourages people, I guess, like people trying to do challenge runs of actually beating difficult events with Raditz on the team, even though, you know, a lot of the time those runs, it would be a case of you kind of have to try and hide Raditz and hope for the best. But you know, people were doing stuff like that and actually beating events with Raditz on the team, or trying to beat events with Raditz's leader skill. Because I guess the one thing that Raditz had going for him truly was the fact that obviously he had Pure Saiyans as part of his lead, so you could still build teams with him that were relatively good. It's just that he himself obviously was not very good. So it's one of those things where with Baby, he just feels very, very like just nothing, much of a nothingness. Like his leader skill is one of the big things I want to talk about. I think his leader skill, for the potential of what we could have seen for a Dokkan Fest baby, I think his leader skill is really disappointing. Corroded Body and Mind and Battle of Fate. Now, Battle of Fate is not a terrible category in terms of overall, like some of the characters that are on here, but the thing is, like, a lot of these units are LRs, and, you know, we have the big final fights of a lot of these arcs where it's the super versus extreme, and Baby being a character who is very limited to, you know, wanting to have extreme class allies on rotation to get some of his buffs, like the Scouter and the extra super. The Corroded Body and Mind full rotation for the extra damage reduction is another thing, but we'll talk about that a bit later. It's not necessarily make or break for him, but I mean, against some of the tougher bosses, he will obviously perform a lot worse without that damage reduction. But when it comes to Battle of Fate, like, we got the few GT characters on here, Omega, Super 17, who's obviously getting his EZA. Unfortunately, the LR baby is a bit too outdated, and we do get characters like Rose and Zamasu. So, like, Battle of Fate's not a terrible category. We have the link for Omega being on his team. It's cool that, like, he's on Omega's team and Omega's on his team in terms of the full leads. You can kind of switch them around and make a pretty good interchangeable team. But when it comes to TURs, like, especially for the extreme class, like, Battle of Fate is really lacking. Like, a couple of these are just literally the TURs of LRs. So Battle of Fate is really not a category that I would have expected for a Dokkan Fest baby. When we take a look at the categories that a Dokkan Fest baby is actually on, like Terrified Conquerors, Artificial Life Forms, Target Goku was obviously one we kind of expected because of the mission, and he doesn't have that, not even as part of his like extra part of the plus 50%. At least he has Terrifying Conquerors there, but like Terrifying Conquerors being one of the other 170, like imagine if you just swapped Terrifying Conquerors and Battle of Fate. Like, the number of extra characters that would be on the team that would be significantly better. I know Terrifying Conquerors doesn't have a huge amount of crossover with Final Trump Card and Battle of Fate, but there are some on there. I feel like instantly that would be better. Revenge, Space Traveling Warriors. I mean, Corroded Body and Mind, it makes sense because of who Baby is as a character and what happens in the arc and everything, with like all the Earthlings being taken over and all that kind of stuff. Like, even though Corroded Body and Mind isn't a great category either, like, that makes a lot of sense as being the leader skill for a Dokkan Fest baby. So that's definitely not something that I'm complaining about. As much as it's not a great category, like, we could argue in the sense of like, I guess it would have been better for him to have a better category. But when it comes to having a new Dokkan Fest that leads Corroded Body and Mind, like, Baby does kind of seem like the perfect choice for that, right? So to me, I think that's fine. Like, Corroded Body and Mind as a lead, whilst it's not ideal, isn't the end of the world, and it's at least fitting for the character. But the problem is, yeah, Battle of Fate as the secondary lead, I think, is something that most people probably wouldn't have expected, is not really super fitting, I think, in terms of his character, and the fact that his passive, like, I don't know why they made it so that he needs to have a full rotation of Corroded Body and Mind. Like, why is this not when allies attacking in the same turn are Corroded Body and Mind or Battle of Fate? Because you're immediately hamstringing him with his own abilities, like with his own team, like with his own leader skill, because you now basically have to run a full Corroded Body and Mind team, or at least a setup where you can have a full Corroded Body and Mind rotation with the baby. Because if you're running Baby's lead, you can't have a full Corroded Body and Mind rotation for both babies all the time, unless the whole team is full Corroded Body and Mind. And that category, as we've said, like, is just not particularly great. The problem is, as I talked about in some of the other videos we've done, talking about potential upcoming stuff with like the, you know, Divers collab Saiyan potential, the Heroes EZAs that we still have upcoming, and then even like the ones in the future years, like, Corroded Body and Mind is just one of those categories that doesn't have a lot of characters on it. And I don't mean like units in the game, I mean actual specific characters, right? You've got the Goku Blacks, Metal Coolers, Majin Vegetas, Babies, Hellfighter 17, I guess Spopovich and Yamu, because they are the mind control. Hang on, shouldn't... maybe this is just not updated, because the new banner unit, Spopovich, should absolutely be on here, right? He's probably just not shown on the wiki. But yeah, like, there's very few characters. Dabura, I mean, a new Dokkan Fest Dabura could be pretty cool. But then what would he... Is Dabura on Terrifying Conquerors? That would be good if he was, because he'd be on Baby's full leader skill. That would make a lot of sense. He is. Okay, so that would be cool. But it's just one of those things where if a unit releases and by the end of the celebration their team isn't like a top tier team in the game, that feels like a disappointing release overall. And that's, you know, exactly what happened with the Namek Scout of Vegeta. We got a Part 2 LR and we got some EZAs that were Namek Saga characters, but none of them were that great overall, and the whole celebration as a whole just kind of ended up feeling really disappointing. And unfortunately, like, I know the celebration's not over, so I'm not going to say that this is another example of that happening right here, like 100%, because, you know, by the end of the celebration we could get a bunch of extra EZAs and stuff like that that massively improve Baby's team and make Baby significantly better. But It's also just odd that the Easy A for part 1 of the celebration is the Tech LR Super 17, which, you know, we've needed his Easy A for a long time. We've been waiting for it. Hopefully he'll be good. But he's a Battle of Fate character. So straight away, like, Baby needs slot 1 units because he's not a slot 1. So this guy gets an Easy A, potentially is really good, becomes a good slot 1 option for Baby's team, but therefore making it impossible for the Baby on that rotation to have a full Corroded Body and Mind rotation, because obviously Super 17 isn't on Corroded Body and Mind. So it just seems like a really odd choice for the design for this guy, for a unit that people have been waiting for such a long time, who had the potential because of all the categories that he's on. This is one of the reasons why Baby has been such a highly anticipated Dokkan Fest for such a long time, because when it comes to extreme characters, he has a really good set of categories, so therefore he has the potential for a leader skill that is really, really good when it comes to making these extreme teams. And obviously things like the GDC and like these big celebrations are the few times that we get really big meta shifting buffs for extreme teams, right, with these characters. I mean, like, even Rosé Super Bosses wasn't in a great spot really at the end of the GDC, but Omega's team was in an absolutely fantastic spot, and Rosé could be run on that team. So Extreme definitely was in a very good spot at the end of the GDC. But when a character drops like this, where the category or leads are still fairly limiting, and sometimes, again, it is kind of because of the character, right? Corroded Body and Mind being one of the leads for Baby makes a lot of sense for the character and everything. But it feels like if you're going to do that, they've got to back it up with the quality of units, Easy A's, like all that. Like the banner unit Trunks, for example, is not particularly great. Weird design, wants to be in slot 1, but is one of those units that has to take a hit and then gets a defensive buff, which means there's a ton of situations where he just actually won't be good in slot 1 at all. And so that just feels like a really odd part of his design. So it's just something that is a little bit strange for this guy overall. And then when it comes to his overall performance, I know I've spent a lot of time talking about his leader skill and his team, but I mean, that is a big part of it. But you can throw him on some other teams, right? Like, he can work really well on the Omega team in terms of links, obviously not with having the full Corroded Body and Mind set up, but he only needs Corroded Body and Mind or GT bosses allies in order to transform early, which is ideally what you want, because if we talk about his performance, right, he has a 70% chance to dodge and he has guard. His start of turn defense at Rainbow level 10 links with Big Bad Bosses active is usually only around 300 odd K. So again, as we said, he's not a slot 1 unit. And then he attacks for the first time, gets a one-off buff of like a little bit of extra dodge chance, which is then 80% on turn 1. If he takes the big hit on that turn from a boss that supers and hits quite hard fairly early on, then that's just instant GG. And then when he transforms after his first attack, he has 90% chance to dodge. So I mean, I've had turns for him where, you know, it's his first turn as Super Baby 2, he has the 90% chance to dodge, he dodges like 5 attacks in slot 2, all 5 attacks, and that's really, really good. But then after that, it drops back down to 70%, and again, with his start of turn defense, he's an infinite stacker, but he doesn't stack really, really fast, right? It's not the kind of thing where, you know, you have him out for like 2 turns, he gets a couple of supers each turn, and then he's tanking big super attacks. He, even after a good few turns, I was doing one of the events earlier, I think it was the Kale and Caulifla Red Zone stage from the Pure Saiyan Red Zone, and it was already, we were up to like turn 8 or 9 or something, and his defense was still only like 600k. Now obviously he gets 250% when he attacks, so that jumps up to like 2 odd million with guard, but that's not enough for some of these bosses that are hitting for like 5, 6, 7 million damage, right? So overall his performance just doesn't seem that crazy. His attack stats, you know, as Super Baby 1, I mean, the first turn I literally got a chance to play with this guy, I had the Trunks in slot 1, and the Trunks did like a 24 million super into a 25 million, and then Baby attacked and did like 23. So less than the banner unit. Now obviously he's not supposed to start off crazy powerful, he transforms and then starts stacking and he builds up, but even in those runs that I mentioned again, where we got to like turn 8, 9, I never really saw him get higher than sort of about 38, 39, maybe breaking into 40 million in these events that aren't super long. And then, you know, when it comes to things like Festival, yes, he's a stacker, so in theory he'll be good there as long as he just keeps stacking and stacking. But that's any stacking unit with enough time to stack is going to end up being decent. It's just annoying that they made him Extreme STR, so he's not even helpful for that Extreme mission that they just released. Like, I feel like at least that could be at least one extra tick in the column of like, is baby good, or like, was he a good release? Because if he was like, let's say Extreme AGL, he would straight away be a much better choice for doing that mission than the Scout of Vegeta, because the Scout of Vegeta is not very good. Or if he was Extreme Int, a lot of people having to rely on using that old legendary Super Saiyan Broly. But if this guy was Extreme Int, he would be a much better choice for that team build. So overall, I think this guy, in terms of what people were kind of expecting, or at least what people have been anticipating, the fact that we've never gotten a Dokkan Fest baby, it's finally come around after being, I mean, it's almost the level of, not quite, because that will probably be the ultimate Dokkan meme forever at this point, but it's almost at the level of like the LR Kid Buu, of the people wanting a Dokkan Fest baby. Every single time we got to a point of like, a new filler Dokkan Fest is going to be coming out, or it is a slightly bigger celebration, but it looks like the potential that it could be GT related. The idea of a Dokkan Fest baby would get brought up every single time, because it was one of the ones that people wanted to see that we still didn't have. And now we finally have him in game, and honestly, he just doesn't seem that great. Now, again, I will caveat this by saying, as I did mention briefly earlier, like, there is the possibility that by the end of the celebration, they've released like maybe the Part 2 LR and some other EZAs and stuff like that, that then make Baby's team significantly better, and we get some big buffs for Corroded Body and Mind specifically, to help out with that other part of his passive. You know, we could get the November Dokkan Fest Marseillan with a bunch of crossover EZAs, the Supreme Kai of Time Corrupted that's going to EZA that's on Corroded Body and Mind could actually end up being somewhat decent. So like, there could be buffs for Baby's team even before the end of the year that could be relatively good. But then we've also got to think about the potential of the anniversary upcoming at the end of January, and the potential power creep that there could be from that. And will Baby and his team be able to survive that level of difficulty? Because I made a video the other day trying to run a full Corroded Body and Mind team with Baby's leader skill, and characters like Tech Janemba, who's probably one of the better options for a full Corroded Body and Mind team, can't cut it against some of these tougher bosses now. So as the time continues to go on and new harder events come out, the full Corroded Body and Mind build of a Baby team is just going to be even worse. So yeah, overall, a little bit all over the place, I know. It's just kind of off the dome. I wanted to have a bit of a discussion, a bit of a vent, I guess, about my thoughts on this guy after using him in a bunch of different events today and yesterday. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think he will see some massive improvements before the end of his celebration? What do you think those could be, or what do you think they need to be? What do we need to see in order for this guy and his team to be good? Let me know all of your thoughts on the Dokkan Fest baby and his release down below in the comment section. And yeah, all I can say is if they eventually release they do eventually release LR Kid Buu, and he's as disappointing a release as this guy is, I feel like there'll be riots. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.